Young Sheldon's Georgie and Mandy broke up before the events of The Big Bang Theory, but does Georgie marry Mandy sometime before the sequel series begins? Throughout Season 6, young Sheldon offers nods to events that won't occur until The Big Bang Theory. One episode explains why young Sheldon's Mimo changes before The Big Bang Theory begins, while another offers a sad hint at George So's upcoming death. Several moments question what happens to Missy between young Sheldon and Big Bang Theory. However, it is young Sheldon Season 6, Episode 7, A Tougher Nut and a Note on File, that suggests one of the most unexpected bits of previously unexplored The Big Bang Theory lore. While Georgie and the mother of his first child, Mandy, are no longer together in the show, it is never explained what happens between them, even though Mandy majorly impacts The Big Bang Theory. In the opening scenes of the episode, they unintentionally mirror Mandy's parents when awkwardly encountering each other at a restaurant. But does Georgie marry Mandy? When Georgie and Mandy run into Mandy's distant parents at a restaurant, it becomes clear that Georgie is too much like Mandy's father. Mandy is afraid of becoming a carbon copy of her mother as a result. Since Georgie later compares Mandy's disposition to her mother's attitude, it is not an unfounded fear. While George Jr.'s attempt to impress Mandy was doomed, he did make a good impression on Mandy's father, only for Mandy and her mother to simultaneously scold their two love interests for having a conversation. The two conciliatory men tried to shake hands while the hard-headed Mandy and her equally obstinate mother discouraged this peace offering. Mandy has reason to worry about her and George recreating the loveless dynamic her parents had, since Georgie essentially mirrors her father in both interactions. This still makes fans wonder, does Georgie marry Mandy? Mandy doesn't want to end up like her parents because her father undermined her mother, and her mother doesn't trust her father's judgment. The two were at odds rather than working together as a team. This is something that became obvious when Mandy's father went behind her mother's back to offer her money via the Coopers. Mandy spent Season 6 befriending young Sheldon's Missy and even tolerating Sheldon. However, Mandy can't stand the thought of becoming like her mother, since her parents had a dysfunctional, unhappy marriage. This makes her and Georgie's eventual breakup before The Big Bang Theory inevitable, despite the young Sheldon couple seeming stable. The only question now is how Georgie and Mandy end up together and what leads to their breakup. Georgie dropped out of school when he was 17, which led to his ownership of Dr. Tyre. He also started dating Mandy at this time, and she ended up pregnant with their child. By the young Sheldon finale, Georgie proposed to Mandy, and she said yes. The best thing about their wedding was that it happened in the final season, and George Sr. witnessed it before his death at the end of the series. The Big Bang Theory clearly shows that Georgie and Mandy end up getting divorced, but by the end of this series, they are happily married. While there have been lots of rumors about the next Big Bang Theory spin-off, it turned out that young Sheldon got the first spin-off. This is Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, which hints they might end up back together down the line. The show could mean this is their first marriage individually, but there have been lots of hints that Georgie and Mandy will end up reuniting and getting married a second time, something even The Big Bang Theory never mentioned. Even if that isn't true, the new show will continue the story of most of the young Sheldon family members, other than Sheldon, who has already moved away to start his continued education. On top of Montana Jordan and Emily Osment as Georgia and Mandy, they are joined by a solid group of supporting actors. While Reagan Reverd, Annie Potts, and Zoe Perry return from young Sheldon, they are only recurring roles in the new series. Instead, this series focuses on Mandy's family, as her parents and siblings are the focus of this sitcom after they move in with the McAllisters. Based on the synopsis and first trailer, it seems that Jim is happy to accept Georgie as a son-in-law, but her mother, Audrey, doesn't trust him as a husband or a father. The first season of Georgie and Mandy's first marriage premieres on October 17, 2024, in the same time slot that young Sheldon held during its run. Young Sheldon has always been more than just a prequel to The Big Bang. Beneath its comedic heart and quirky genius, the series often delivers subtle, emotionally rich storylines that shape its characters in surprisingly mature ways. And in the case of Georgie and Mandy, perhaps the show's most unexpected, lovable couple, The breakup that fans saw coming in The Big Bang Theory was delicately foreshadowed all along in young Sheldon. The final episodes may not have made it explicit, but if you've been paying attention, the seeds of their eventual split were already planted. In fact, young Sheldon may have secretly revealed exactly why Mandy and Georgie broke up, and it's both heartbreaking and completely in character. Let's take a look at how it all unfolded. Mandy and Georgie's love story was never a fairy tale. Their relationship began with a major age gap and a lie. Georgie claimed to be older than he was. That deception alone was enough to doom most budding romances, but the two somehow managed to find a genuine connection amidst the mess. When Mandy became pregnant, everything changed. Suddenly, they were thrown into parenthood before they'd even figured themselves out. And oddly, that chaos created a kind of emotional glue that bonded them. But even though they tried their best, there was always a sense that they were trying to make it work, rather than just being in love. Their affection was real, but so was the underlying stress. Mandy was career-driven, smart, sarcastic, and grounded. Georgie, though well-meaning and loyal, lacked direction and maturity, traits that, while charming at times, often clashed with Mandy's needs. One of the most telling clues about their future came in Season 7, as Georgie started showing signs of real growth. He took more responsibility, tried to build a future for his daughter, and even began to think about how to support his young family. But here's the catch. Georgie's idea of stepping up didn't always align with what Mandy envisioned. While he thought being a good provider meant working at Meemaw's laundromat and staying in Medford, Mandy quietly wanted more. This disconnect isn't just about ambition, it's about identity. Mandy never planned to be a mom at that stage in her life, let alone be tied down in a small Texas town. Her dreams were bigger, broader, and less rooted in domesticity. She adapted for Georgie, but adaptation isn't the same as fulfillment. In Season 7, the show subtly portrayed Mandy's internal conflict. Her frustrations were never over the top. Instead, there were small, poignant moments, a look of weariness when Georgie brushed off her concerns, a quiet sigh when he made another impulsive decision, a distant expression when he talked about settling down too soon. These little emotional beats added up, even if Georgie never noticed. Here's where things get interesting. In The Big Bang Theory, we know that Georgie and Mandy aren't together. He's a successful businessman, owns a tire chain, and lives a completely different life. There's no mention of Mandy, no hint that she's still part of the picture. And when Sheldon talks about his brother in the original show, there's never any reference to a high school sweetheart turned life partner. It's almost like she never existed. So what happened? Young Sheldon slyly fills in the blanks without spelling it out. It's in the quiet moments, the unresolved tension, and the gradual divergence of their goals. Mandy, for all her love for Georgie, likely realized that staying together would mean giving up too much of herself. Georgie, meanwhile, may have mistaken loyalty for love, thinking that staying with Mandy was the only way to be a good father. But love that's born from obligation is rarely sustainable. One of the most subtle but powerful moments in Season 7 comes when Mandy begins to talk about going back to work. Her voice is cautious, even hopeful. She doesn't want to rock the boat, but she craves independence. Georgie, in contrast, doesn't really get it. He supports her on paper, but his actions suggest he's more comfortable with the status quo. Then there's their communication, or lack thereof. They constantly talk around their problems, not through them. Mandy swallows her doubts, and Georgie puts on a smile, assuming everything's fine if no one's yelling. That kind of emotional avoidance doesn't lead to long-term happiness. It leads to simmering resentment and eventual distance. And perhaps the most heartbreaking detail, they both seem to love their daughter more than they love each other. Their shared commitment to Cease is undeniable, but a child can't be the sole reason for a relationship to survive. Love for a child doesn't automatically translate into compatibility as partners. If the show follows through with realism, Georgie and Mandy's breakup won't be explosive. It'll be quiet, bittersweet.